Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers. We're here to talk Seahawks football. I've got kind of a updated free agency availability list for you today on a few different position groups that the Seahawks still may have a few holes to fill prior to training camp. They're looking pretty good overall, Keith. They've got their 90-man roster, give or take, pretty well set, but the team is continuing to look at potential competition players to come in and compete for spots, maybe an upgrade. We just don't know at this point exactly how they feel about the roster. But let's talk about those position groups we know that they would be interested in looking at, especially given the depth issues at those groups, and talk about players that could potentially be available. Welcome in.
Yeah. So, yeah, really. I mean, we'll talk about this and see if we agree. But I think we, no matter what, we'll agree on three defensive positions that we expect the Seahawks to go make a move between now and the start of training camp. Right. Cornerback is the first one, which the Seahawks have been talking to some of the bigger named cornerbacks that are still available. So clearly they understand that need. Interior linebacker as a backup piece, because you've got your two starters, but very little behind them. And then the other thing is just depth along the defensive line, defensive tackle. So I don't know, Bill, do you have any other positions that you think the Seahawks are going to be looking?
Yeah, anytime, I think you can say first, like, where's the team in relationship to competing this year, which kind of drives and dictates what you're looking for. I would say, and I would think that John Schneider's going to say, and Mike McDonald, they're going to compete this year for a run in the playoffs, and their ultimate goal is to reach the Super Bowl. I mean, that's what they're going to say every year, but how realistic is that, Keith? And do you think that kind of helps dictate how they build their roster this time of the year?
Well, how realistic is them competing? I don't know. It's hard to say given there's so many unknowns about this team right now. We think we know the defense is going to be good, really good, in fact. And we think that the offense has potential to be good, but
so it's funny that you mentioned that the holes are on the defensive side.
Yes, because the talent
considering
is
it's
on
the more complete
side,
yeah,
but the depth isn't. Whereas on the offensive side, the depth is actually pretty good, but the high end talent isn't there. And so it's kind of the opposite situation. There's no high end talent out there on the offensive side that they could go get to be a massive upgrade for this this upcoming season. And I think that is one of those things that partially dictates why I think the three positions where they're looking are on the defense, because they've got their starters, they've got their guys. What they need is depth, and you can get good depth pieces still in free agency, but you can't go get good starters.
I would say that all of what you said is accurate, especially in the offensive side. They decided quite evidently that they were going to upgrade through the draft on the offensive side. 9 of 11 draft picks are on the offense. They didn't do a lot in free agency. They didn't solve any of their interior offensive line issues through free agency and so on and so forth. I think the offense is fairly well set, as good as it can be this time of the year. Now, if they get into the season and they have some clear deficiencies, they could be active in the trade market prior to the trade deadline on that side of the ball. On the defense, as you said, I think they're pretty well set straight away on the starters and rotation guys. There's a couple position groups though where that depth is really lacking. Cornerbacks interesting, and we can start our conversation there. We already know that they were interested in bringing in Shaquille Griffin, former Seahawks draft pick, kind of come back to the team and add some stability to that room, maybe be a third or fourth guy. They're also looking at Rasul Douglas, who I actually prefer in that spot, 11 picks over his career, or maybe it was even more than that. And just kind of a solid, bigger corner, physical guy. It's my preferred playing style. I think he's a better fit in the scheme, but I don't know exactly what the team is looking at there. If he's just being brought in to put pressure on Griffin to sign, or if it's, I think they've moved on from Griffin and they're now, plan B. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that it could be both, right? It's one of those things where they need to get a guy signed. If Griffin isn't getting done, they're like, we can negotiate with Douglas while we're talking to Griffin's people, and whichever one signs first has a job, and the other one's still looking. And so
now let me ask you this, Keith, because these are two pretty good, solid corners with decent careers.
Yeah.
Why is the team in May looking at these type of players in this position group? What are they seeing out of their own existing roster that is dictating them going out and looking at players like this?
Well, I mean, look at the people ahead of him, right? Spoon is one of the best in the business, and he's up there. Tariq Woolen's been up and down, mostly up if you look at the advanced stats, mostly down if you listen to people on Twitter. I don't recommend doing that. But he's been, the high end has been really good, but there's been some inconsistency in his game. And then Josh Joby, who is the nickel, who is an undrafted guy and kind of just came out of nowhere last year and really proved that he could do it. And then after that, Jeremiah Pritchett, who was a rookie last year and didn't look great when he got on the field. After those top two guys, there's not a track record of good. You've got your two starters, but it's
pretty much practice squad level guys after that. So you've got maybe 4 spots that are accounted for, and a 5th spot is open. And, Zaya Alexander is there, an undrafted rookie free agent. They've all got extended futures contracts to Tyler Hall, JT Woods, Demarion Williams earlier in the year. But really, and Shamar Jean Charles is a guy they brought in, more of a special teams oriented player. So it's a little light on the back end. I get it. The Rasul Douglas. Now, if Douglas is signed, he pretty much would become the third cornerback in this room. Do you agree?
Yes, I would agree. Same with Quill Griffin, is that either one of them would become the third cornerback in the room, because I think they would slot in above Joby as the number 3 guy. And so, and then of course, I think their usage wouldn't just be like, they're in their 3 and Joby only gets in when they have a 4th corner. I think there would be, depending on the need and the opponent and that kind of stuff, there would be some split playing time in there. But yeah, they would put one of those 2 vets in above him as the next guy up. And that's an improvement of overall depth, because right now, if Tariq Woolen rolls an ankle one day and has to sit out a game, you're bringing Jeremiah Pritchett off the bench to be your starting outside corner. And I don't know if that's something that we should all be excited about. So having another guy that can come in and do those things would be ideal for this team right now.
It's kind of an upgraded player over Artie Burns, who's been with them for the last couple of years. But gives them a little bit more upside, of guys that can actually play and really affect the defense. Maybe even finds not necessarily a long term home, but 2 or 3 years, a guy that could come in and really fit the defense. I like the idea of Rasul Douglas. I liked him coming out of in the draft, and then he's kicked around a little bit. But he does have some upside. He's still only 29 years old, 6'2", 209, decent outside cover corner, can play inside, gives you some scheme diversity. There's other players out there, Asante Samuel, Mike Hilton, Gilmore, Kendall Fuller. It really drops off after that.
Well,
James Bradbury, maybe.
Asante Samuel is the big name and would normally be the prize that's out there that teams would be fighting for. But right now, he can't pass a physical. He had a neck injury, and until he gets a clean bill of health and being told that he can play, teams are talking to him, but no one's negotiating with him. Basically, I mean, this is, from what I'm hearing, similar to Cam Chancellor and Cliff Averill, where
Just a really bad stinger that never goes away.
That never is going away, and it might be one of those things that he just ends up having to, call it a career, which would be bad for a lot of different reasons. But he's 26 and was really good before the injury. So I think that, like I said, he'd be the prize. But with that injury,
I still think I'd rather have Douglas, only because Douglas is a little bit more physical. A lot more physical. I mean, as Samuel is great in zone coverage, but he's not a great tackler. He played 4 games last year, and he's struggled with this same injury over and over again. So, so that, after those 2 guys, and I would expect one of those 2, Griffin or Douglas, to sign with Seattle. I think it is definitely one of those position groups where you could definitely say that you could need an upgrade there, and it would help the team. Okay,
Daryl Worley is another option there, and but all 3 of the guys that were, the Worley and the 2 guys that we're talking about, Douglas and Griffin, are all over 30. And that's one of the things that you got to look at. Douglas is 31, Griffin's 30, Worley's 30. All decent players. They're not going to come in and change your defense and be, a star, but they're solid contributors. And but they're short term. That's when you got a guy over 30. Right. That's where they're at.
And that's okay. I mean, Seattle's got some, time. They're really interested in a player this year, and we'll see how that works out. Let's talk about your second position group: inside linebacker, middle linebacker. We've got Ernest Jones and Knight as the starters. After that, it's a little sketch with a bunch of players with some upside, but nobody really has a lot of experience. Drake Thomas, Josh Ross, Patrick O'Connell, Jamie Sheriff is going to move over there as a experiment, essentially. They just signed a kid, Derek Jackson, as an undrafted rookie free agent guy that just signed to the 90s. So after the 2 starters, Keith, we don't have much in the cupboard. They could be looking for a guy now. They don't need a guy maybe like Kaiser White, although I would like that. I don't know if he comes in and plays a third linebacker spot, especially with Emanwari being the big nickel. And I think the team's going to probably trend in that direction. There may not be a lot of snaps here anyway for a middle linebacker. What type of player are you looking for here?
So what I'm looking for here, I mean, Kaiser White would be, I think, kind of an interesting addition, simply because, he's 29, so he's a little younger than the other options. And he's got some versatility as a guy that can move around a little more. He's a good player. I think we're more likely to be looking at a guy like Eric Kendricks. He's 33, played with the Cowboys last year, can still do some interesting things, as he was once a very good player, clearly on the downside, but we're not asking him to come in and be a full-time player. We're asking him to come in and be the 3rd linebacker out of 3. The 3rd linebacker out of the 2 starting positions. So, he'll get some snaps here and there. And I think his knowledge and experience can be very helpful. And I think that would be a good pickup. A lot of people would not be excited about that because, again, he's old, but you're not looking for a long-term solution at this point. You're looking for a guy that's just gonna come in and give you some depth and make your overall roster a little better.
Yeah. Yes. I guess it wouldn't surprise me if White was a player that they'd be interested in and brought in and signed, because they've got the cap space. It'd be a 1-year deal at this point in free agency. I think it would fortify the roster, give us a really good player that you could, hedge against injury and that sort of thing. And it wouldn't hurt your prospect pool, because you've got your practice squad available for a lot of these guys at the back end of the roster here: Thomas, Ross, O'Connell. If you're truly, and that's the reason I asked the initial question is, where is this roster and team overall? Are they ready to compete? Because if they're ready, this is a kind of a move you make when you're really confident in your team getting to the playoffs and kind of making sure you don't have any holes on your roster at all, and you're just ready to attack the season. And if you can get Kaiser White for $3.5 million or less to be a guy that
if he'll sign for that, I'd do it in a second. I don't think he'll sign for that. I don't.
Well,
think
I mean, he doesn't have much of a choice at this point.
Well, or he can sit around and wait, and the first time there's an injury to a star player in preseason, he comes knocking on the door. We've seen our players do that and have it work out for them. So I don't think that he's in a rush. Overall, I mean, I just don't.
How about CJ Mosley or Jalen Reeves, Maben, or Devondre Campbell is another player actually that I've liked in the past. He's probably a little washed at this point, but
true. But again,
he's not being asked to play a lot of snaps either.
Yeah, and that's the thing is him, Eric Kendricks. Those are guys that they still played a lot of snaps last year. One guy that I'm really interested in, just I want to see what he has left, is Shaq Thompson, a guy that has, when he was coming out of college, had speed to burn, just crazy like speed for a linebacker. And now, okay, he's 31 now and coming off an injury and stuff. So we'll see. But I'd like to, I'd kick the tires on that and see what he's got left, because I don't know if that's going to take much for him to sign, because he only played for $3 million last year. So he's a guy that has already kind of been in a position where he might take less just to stay in the league.
Right. Okay. You'd mentioned defensive tackle. And that is even with the signing of Jonathan Hankins. Jonathan Hankins has been sitting out there for a while. If you were to look on a list a couple of weeks ago at defensive tackles available, he'd been, third, fourth, fifth best available defensive tackle. There's not a lot of really good options out there.
There's not.
John Jenkins, Jonathan Bullard, John Kaminsky, Taven Bryan is an interesting name to me. A little bit more on the athletic side. Yeah. Quentin Jefferson's out there too, if you want somebody that's a little quicker and has a little get off to maybe affect the passer. Khalil Davis, Carlos Watkins. There's a few players, but again, what are you looking for here, Keith?
I'm looking for a guy at this point that can just come in as a rotational piece and give your starters some rest, because your guys, when things are going best for a defensive line, guys are playing, the starters are playing 70% of the snaps, 65% of the snaps. You know what I mean? And so you need someone who's going to eat the other 30%, and you want them to be able to contribute and help and be more than just a placeholder. But at the same time, like, sometimes you just need depth. You just need rotation pieces. And the Seahawks did that last year when they traded mid-season for a guy that barely saw the field after the first week, because they just simply didn't have any depth. Everyone was hurt and they just didn't have a rotation whatsoever. So they traded for a guy. He played for a couple of games, and then as people got healthy, he saw his playing time drop to 0, and now he's gone. And that's just the kind of thing that, like, okay, it happens. And you don't want to have to be in that position where you're going out and making moves because you have to in a situation like that. You want to be able to. I was thinking of Roy Robertson Harris. That's the name. Just popped in my head. You want to have those guys on the roster when you can still just sign them for nothing and don't have to give up a draft pick to do it.
This is another position group too, where we just don't have a lot of young players that we're trying to develop that are existing already. I mean, we've got Byron Murphy that's going to slide over there once in a while. We've got Jaron Reed that's going to slide over there once in a while. Leonard Williams can rotate in and so forth, but really a true defensive tackle, nose tackle. We just don't have a lot of those. We've got Quentin Bohanna, Brandon Peely, and we've got 3 undrafted rookie free agents competing on the back end. So if you did bring in a guy that was a proven commodity, they could rotate with Jonathan Hankins at that true nose tackle spot, a guy like Jonathan Bullard or Taven Bryan that could just eat space, take up double teams, etc. I would like that. I mean, that would make me feel a lot better about the rotation on the defensive side of the ball and allow guys like Byron Murphy and Jaron Reed to play their natural spots, which is going to be the B gap stuff.
Yeah. That's absolutely. I mean, it really comes down to they just need bodies. They need a couple of bodies, preferably one that would play pure nose tackle, a guy that's 330 pounds, that can come in and be a rotational piece there. And then, another defensive end, a B gap style, a guy like Byron Murphy, just to be a rotational guy, a guy that can, come in and play a few snaps a game and be there, just to make sure that the starters are, not overly gassed come the end of the end of the game when you really need them.
So if there was going to be an offensive position group where I think maybe they would consider it, would only be after they went through mini camps and just decided that they'd feel better with a veteran presence there instead of having Christian Haynes, LeMay, and Bradford compete there on the right side. I think we already know that Zabel's going to lock down that left side spot. Cabledew's going to compete there as a backup. Guys like Brandon Scherf are out there. Dalton Risner is an interesting name to me. He's only 29. He was with Minnesota the last couple years, and he's familiar with Sam Darnold. And they didn't do a bad job last year. They were well coached, but the team drafted Donovan Jackson. Minnesota did. And so he's probably not going to go back to them. He's sitting out there, and that would be an interesting name just to bring in and compete. And
another guy would be Shane Lemieux, who was with the Saints last year. And he's a guy that, right, because he ran Kubiak's system last year, and so having a guy like him come in just to help other guys learn, what are your keys, what are you looking for, and
didn't
just
he start with the Seahawks like 4 or 5 years ago?
Honestly, I don't remember him being with Seattle.
That name sounds so familiar. I think he was kind of like a center or something like that, and just
maybe
didn't make the roster. Shaq Mason, Nick Harris is still out there. Will Hernandez, a guy that banged up his knee, that's a little older now, 30 years old, but not horrible. Pass rush, pass block win rate of 94% in each of the past 3 seasons. Physical run blocker. He's familiar with the NFC West. So that would be somebody that I could see potentially. But after that, the list is just kind of, you would just bring it in for competition. Yeah.
This list is not good. If they go out at camp and they're like, none of these guys are going to develop. Like, let's just cut Bradford, give the other guys another year to try and develop. But right now they are not ready. Then you hope that Brendan Scheff is still there and available. And if he's not, then yeah, you go and grab someone like Shane Lemieux or Dalton Risner. But honestly, I think with the number of bodies that they have at guard, I think they run with what they've got on the roster.
I do too.
Um,
I honestly, I do. And that's why they're not on our primary list of position groups that we need. But yeah, I agree.
They've got like four young guys at the position, not named Gray Zabel, that they think can develop into a good player. You need one of those four to make a big step forward over this offseason and training camp. Just one.
How comfortable are you at the tackle position, where we've got Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, but behind that we've got Gerald, Josh Jones, Mason Richmond, a draft pick, Mari Kite, that is an undrafted rookie free agent guy. So there's not a lot there if there's an injury concern with Abraham Lucas, for example.
True. I mean, that's why they signed Jones. So I think that's one of those things where it's worth, like they've got a guy that they think can do the job. And so I don't think they feel like they have to go get another player. They might want to go get another player. It might be a good idea, depending on your thoughts on Jones.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not good out there. I mean, obviously, we signed Jones. We liked him enough in regular free agency in March. And we haven't done anything since. We addressed the position in the draft, but not until the 7th round. They must feel comfortable with that, or they feel like they can get a guy if they had to. There's just not a lot out there. At this time of the year really in this particular position group. Every other position group is okay.
So you look around the league or around, free agency and the guys the names that are out there are like, find me a player here that's good.
Well, that's not going to happen. I mean, TJ Humphries at one point wasn't okay.
At one point he was okay.
George Fant is still out there, but obviously he's not here. Was here last year, got hurt.
Yeah.
They didn't have him back. Mm-hmm. He's not been signed by any other team. But he's a guy that you could theoretically say, okay, I'm comfortable with his work ethic. He's a good locker room guy. We saw him last year. He fits, at least it's a body, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, to give you an idea of just how bare the cupboard is at offensive tackle out there, if you sort the list of available players by how many, like the percentage of snaps they played last year, meaning that they were healthy enough to get on the field and good enough to get on the field, the one with the second highest snap percentage is freaking Jermaine Ifedi.
Yeah, and he's currently the third best free agent offensive tackle still available.
Yeah, if he's the third best, then there's absolute trash behind him. Because Jermaine Ifedi, at no point, at any point in his entire career, would anybody have considered him good. He has been an absolute disaster since the day he was drafted. And so it's not surprising to me that he's still out there, unsigned.
When you get on the bad side of a guy, you are relentless. Like Bradford, like he's always the first name that you bring up. We're just gonna, if he gets cut or if he, loses his job. I am in disagreement with you on Bradford. I'm a total wait and see guy with him, and I think he's going to actually surprise. Just because he's a hard worker, Keith. He's been in the offseason program again, and he's got new coaches. And from what I understand, these guys really like him, and we'll
athletically,
he does not how that goes.
The scheme. He does not fit the scheme whatsoever.
I think he's going to surprise in that area.
He's a guy that is really good in a tiny little box. Put him in a phone booth, and he can block the guy in front of him. But make him move laterally. Have him, where he has to like engage someone in space, and he does not have the athleticism to do that, and he never will. And that's just not what his body type is. And we've seen enough of him playing really badly. And then you look at the fact that he's not a fit for the scheme. I don't know why. I mean, the only reason why you wait and see is because he's really, really cheap. And there's no, there's nothing to
that's
gain by
definitely a
cutting
great
him
point.
in terms of salary cap room or that kind of stuff. But I don't believe anyone should have any hope that he's going to suddenly become, a good player. Not in this new scheme.
It really does depend on how many guards they keep. Now, if they keep 4 guards, I think he's on the roster.
I don't. I think Lumea, Haynes, and Cable do are the 3 besides Zabel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at least Lumea and Haynes have upside in this system athletically. Same with Cable do. But Bradford's the most experienced of the group, and he might be the worst of the group. Like as far as on-field performance. And then he's also athletically the least, he fits the system least. So that's why I just continue to not consider him a viable roster addition at this point.
So, is there any other holes on the roster that you think we could add to with the existing free agent crop that's out there? I mean,
honestly,
wide receiver, I was going to say would potentially be one, but then you look at the room and we've got our guys.
Yeah.
The only thing that you could point to free agency for would be an injury. And I think we're pretty well set there.
Yeah. I mean, if they wanted to go in and look at one of those guys, I mean, Keenan Allen is out there. That would be fun. That's a guy that
a couple of years ago would have been fun.
A couple of years ago was a great player, but this year,
and he's a slot guy.
Now.
I mean, we've already got a couple, 2, 3 of those guys on the roster.
Well, he was an outside guy in San Diego. But yeah, and then like Tyler Boyd's out there, but again, he's a slot guy. Amari Cooper is perhaps the most overrated wide receiver in the last decade. And that's kind of the end of the list of guys you're thinking like, ooh, they could come in and actually help. So yeah, there's just not a lot of names at that position.
I noted when I was looking at this list, I did note Dwayne Eskridge is sitting out there. The potentially one of the top 5 worst draft picks of all time for Seattle. That was Seattle. In a year too. We only had 3 draft picks, and he was one of them. And we passed on Creed Humphrey to do it. Actually, just one of those deals.
He signed with the Dolphins.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, okay, good. So he's off the list. Awesome.
So,
yeah. Okay. So upcoming shows wise, I was thinking about doing a show on media expectations of this team versus our reality of what our expectations are of this team. Because I'm seeing a ton of articles and power listings and so forth that are really painting Seattle as almost a rebuilt team that has no shot at taking the division or even competing, no shot at the playoffs or any of that. That Darnold's going to have a regression, and the Cooper Cup isn't close to DK Metcalf. People are just analyzing this really weirdly, and I just kind of want to talk about it with somebody. I was hoping you'd engage.
No, I'd love that discussion because it's one of those things when you look at the national media, they are so down on Seattle right now. But if you look at anyone that knows the team and the roster really well, some of the local guys or guys from the Athletic that follow the Seahawks, maybe used to be a beat writer for Seattle before moving to the Athletic. They're bullish on the Seahawks and their chances. So I think that's a really interesting thing is that the national perception is very different from a more nuanced perception if you really look deeply. And I think
And
that's
I
where
like
it's
that
breaking
word.
down.
I like that word nuance as opposed to homer, because you could be accused of being a homer if you paint your team too wildly optimistically.
Yeah.
And I get that, but also realistically, I think that we're better than a lot of the national media thinks that we are.
Yeah, because I don't think that the national media looks at Seattle's defense and sees a top 3 defense. Um, what it's like they look at their the way it finished last year where they were middle of the road, 15th or something, and we're like,
Right,
yeah, not that good. But that was after being historically bad for the first 8 weeks. And
right,
then we're really, really good for the last 8 weeks.
right.
Um, and
Yes.
then
Which is now the trajectory. Yes.
which is now the trajectory and the changes they made to the starting lineup that helped make that happen, where they got really good. Those guys are still here, and the
Yes.
guys that were the problem that got benched or traded or cut, um, at the point where that transition happened, they're not here. Right? They've all
Yes.
been replaced. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But we'll get into this in a lot more detail
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah. Let's do that. All right. I think we're in pretty good shape. I mean, after this conversation, it's like, yeah, there's not that much out there. I mean, let's get that corner and get that position solved. After that, I'm not so concerned. Let the competition play out in training camp. If we need
Mm-hmm.
some additional help as time goes on, the season starts. Let's let John do some magic there. But we only have 5 draft picks next year, Keith. There's not a lot of trade compensation in the cupboards, so to speak. And I'm not sure I would be willing to or want to trade one of those 5 draft picks away to acquire talent unless I knew absolutely for sure it was going to help us get
Mm-hmm.
elevated and win a game or two for us. That would kind of be the criteria for me. Otherwise, I'd just say, let's just run with what we got.
Agreed.
But anyway, all right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube, and leave comments, likes, subscribes, all that good stuff. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.